Hi there. I'm Jonny Lieberman, and I write about cars, and I make videos about cars, and I make podcasts about cars, and I appear on a lot of podcasts about cars.
Yeah. Uh, if you know.
Well, why don't we lead into that then? You do a lot of podcasts, and you've written about cars forever. Not forever. We know
Two
some
decades. 2 decades.
two decades.
Yeah,
You started at Jalopnik or Autoblog. Or,
neither. I started the first three things that, well, longer than 2 decades if you count this very obscure Portland-based publication called Too Much Coffee Man, which was like a comic book that they made a magazine, a print magazine out of.
that's
And
sorry.
a friend of mine was the editor there, and he knew I like cars. Actually, he just wanted me to write something. I wanted to write about cars, but I didn't know how to. So I wrote whenever the first Fast and Furious movie came out, I wrote a review of it for Too Much Coffee Man. So that was my first thing. And then my second was this website called The Truth About Cars,
Yeah,
uh, which might actually still in some weird form be around. But back then it was like Robert Farago, and I think
right.
it was just him. There might have been this guy Frank also, but I just kind of like wrote him and said, "Hey, like I'd like to write for you," and then I wrote like I think three things for that, and the third thing I wrote got reposted on Jalopnik by Davy G. Johnson, who, true story, I met at a strip club in L.A. called Jumbo's Clown Room, and we really hit it off there, and kind of lost touch. We were like friends on. Remember Friendster?
I do.
So Friendster, for you kids out there, kind of predated MySpace as like the first social media app. It was a website only, but and it died, so I kind of lost touch with Davey. But then I didn't even know about Jalopnik, and I think he was the second employee at Jalopnik, and he reposted it, and we got back in touch with each other. And then a week later, I was writing for Jalopnik, and yeah, the rest is history.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I remember when Jalopnik started. Somewhere at a launch, I was talking to Spinelli, and we were still coding our content, like just doing the HTML template and adding content into it. But we had the forums on Vortex, and I remember pitching, like after talking to Mike, coming home and pitching that at my team, and they were like, "Well, that's for like journals. Why would you do that? Like blogs are they're over, man. So
Right, right,
or
right.
they're too niche." You also went to Autoblog before you ended up at Motor Trend, if I remember correctly.
Oh, I went a bunch of places. I was at Web Rides TV. I can't even remember, but yes, Autoblog for a while, actually, like at least 2 years. I was at Autoblog, and that was great. That was really good experience at Autoblog because it was Jalopnik was great in terms of like this obscure little site had like an outsized reach at the time. Like everybody who wrote about cars or wanted to write about cars was reading it.
Right.
I don't think like consumers were reading it, but it's like the Velvet Underground. Like nobody listened to us, but everybody who did is now in a band, and
Right.
so everyone who read Jalopnik back then was like, "Wow, this is really fun," and they became like car journalists. But Autoblog was more professional, and it was also like how do I put this? Like Spinelli and Davey and me and Bumbeck, we're like coastal elites. Whereas like
Mm.
Autoblog was like, the editor in chief lived in Cleveland, and I'd be like, hey dude, there's a Nissan GTR that's been tuned to like 1,000 horsepower. It's right near you in Ohio. Do you want to drive it? And he'd be like, no, I have no interest in that, which like would blow my mind. Like, what do
Right.
you do? I have no, why else are you doing this? And like, he's like, no, I just want like nice front three quarters of like the Ford Taurus. That's mainstream. So that was good training. Like, oh, like there is this larger in market kind of thing, and you have to, the bulk of cars sold are not 1,000 horsepower GTRs for whatever reason. Um,
Right.
they're so that was good, and then also, and I'm still proud of this was when Autoblog did an auto show. We were a friggin' machine, and I don't even know they didn't pay us
Yeah.
anything. So we were just young, but like we would go to a car show. We'd go to like Geneva, and we'd go heavy. We'd bring like all of us, and so that would be like I don't know, like 10 people, and there was this unspoken competition, like who could make the most posts in a day at an auto show, and like you'd have like 10 dudes making 12 posts each. You know what I mean? So like and it
Right.
was just like, and like was the, the quality maybe wasn't the greatest, but as Joseph Stalin said, sometimes quantity has a quality all its own, and we would just dominate that space. They got away from that, but like auto blog and an auto show is an exciting thing to be a part of. um
Yeah.
it just it
Can I
was
tell you from the other side of it? Like
yeah, 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 yeah.
coming in on the forum side, we're just a little bit ahead of the blogs time wise, not anything else, I guess. But I remember very specifically, like Hyundai, I think had just launched the Genesis, and the first Genesis coupe was at New York Auto Show, as I recall, and it was out on some like thing where there was a bridge that I never remember ever taking again for another event. But I went out there because we were thinking about maybe doing a Hyundai site. What's this Genesis about? Kind of looking into it. And I saw the car and it was crazy. And then I left early, like right after the car was revealed, and started walking back across that bridge. And like, I probably wasn't halfway across. And John, your editor, came
Neff, yeah, John
sprinting,
Neff.
sprinting past me right, to get to the media center, to get it live, to be first, which was brilliant from a search engine perspective. But even then, I think probably in my late 20s or 30s at the time, like I was just like, oh man, is that where this is going? Right? Like it's less fun.
There was definitely some of that. But what was crazy was Neff never, that's what blew me away, was we were all so into it. And Neff never said there's a minimum amount you have to post.
Right.
It was just it's one of those things where it was just expected that you were a motivated self-starter.
Sure, sure.
It was just you were just and everyone behaved that way that was on staff.
Yeah.
And and again, like we were so naive. We were so unlike automotive journalists. Like I remember I was flying to Geneva with Drew Phillips, who's our photographer. By the way, talk about a friggin' machine. We would bring one photographer, and this guy would like take photos of every single thing at the Geneva. And you remember Geneva
Yeah.
or like
Or
Frankfurt.
Frankfurt. Yeah.
This one dude would photograph everything to supply everybody with images.
Brutal.
It was insane how hard Drew Phillips worked. Um, but we were flying coach to Geneva because even though Autoblog was offered trips, they wouldn't take them for auto shows because I can't remember why. It was nothing ethical. It was like, oh, having to go to dinner would interfere with posting or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's none of those. It
Practical.
wasn't like a newspaper thing. Like,
Yeah.
so we're flying. I remember like we're flying coach, and I was trying to. Oh, sorry, there's a helicopter overhead. Sorry, the joys of living in Los Angeles. I, I have no idea why. It's a big copter. Sorry.
Yeah.
We're in
As
the
long
podcast.
I can't really hear it, but as long as they're
Oh
not
wow!
coming to get you, we're good.
Literally flew over my head. I remember I was standing there. It was me, Drew Phillips, and do you remember Scott Oldham, who was the editor in chief of Edmund at the time, or
I
Inside
do.
Live, I called it. And we're sitting there, and he's like, "Well, I'm flying." He's going out with Audi or whatever. He's like, I'm flying out, business. And I'm like, "Well, hey, like, the thing about flying business is you got to be on the plane longer." And he kind of looks at me. He's like, "Well, I'm getting on the plane now." And then I'm like, and then and because as you know, around the Geneva Auto Show, like staying in Geneva was really expensive. We
Right.
would stay like two men to a room.
France.
Uh no, like 90 miles away. We would have
Oh,
to get up at 4 a.m. and take the train into Geneva to save money. It was totally insane. It was
right.
absolutely insane what Autoblog did. So I have a lot of, like I said, I'm proud of what we did and the way we did it, because it was like this army going to work, and I've never seen anybody attack an auto show like that.
Yeah.
It was crazy, and they don't do it like that anymore either. It's all, and
Well,
then, as you know, everything's released beforehand anyways, so there's
right.
you can
Are there even auto shows? I mean, I guess we just had Munich, but
I we killed them. Yeah, Autoblog killed the auto show. No, yeah, yeah. I guess Munich was sort of like an auto show. Yeah.
I think it's more Monterey or Goodwood now. But
Yeah, yeah, auto shows are dead, but it was just crazy. It was crazy. So yeah, so I did that, and then I was at Autoblog when I got the call from Angus McKenzie, like, "Hey, you want to have some lunch?" I said, "Yeah," and then I've been at Motor Trend for 15 years, over 15 years. So
Not to bust on Motor Trend, but I think one of
Plus,
the brilliant things you've done is diversify, right? Like watching from afar, I don't think you and I have ever had this conversation, but I think what the way they changed your employment as far as being a contractor, you've been able to do Spike, you've been able to do whether it's Inevitable, which is a Motor Trend production, or Spike, or now your own channel. It definitely speaks to an adaptability you don't often see in this space of this
yeah.
generation.
It's interesting. I remember when I got hired, Angus McKenzie, who who's I cannot stress what an important part of my life Angus is. Like real mentor, real friend, smartest guy in the room. He said, day one, or even before day one, he's like, build your own brand.
Yeah.
And he would tell everybody. I remember his words of wisdom to new hires. He said it to me, and I saw him say it to other people. Was like, hey, listen. You're working for Motor Trend now. This is the big time. You're going to get wined and dined and flown all over the world, and these PR people are going to kiss your ass, and you're going to think they're your best friend. They're not. They're in love with the fact that your business card says Motor Trend. That's it. Never forget that. And he would tell us that day one, which is good,
Right.
because I've definitely seen, when people's let's say their stars fade a little bit and they don't get it. They just really don't get it. And I was prepared for that, and I always was. I don't know if I was really like cognitive. I don't know if I do anything intentionally. I just sort of
So
stumble
reactive.
around. Yeah. Um, but I was always able to maintain a brand outside of Motor Trend.
Right.
Um, I for whatever reason I have a big personality. Whatever. There's less friendly ways to say that. Um, and I've never been shy of sharing my opinion or sticking my foot in my mouth. My favorite Bob Lutz quote, often wrong, never in doubt. Um,
Sure.
so I was able to do that, and yeah, and then video helped obviously. Motor Trend, the channel got very big. My show Head to Head got very big. It became an international thing. We were on Netflix at some point for some reason. I remember a friend of mine, me and my friend flew to Green Bay to go to a Packers game, and we had there's no direct LA to Milwaukee or whatever, so took a couple flights. Like the amount of people, my friend was just blown away, and I kind of at that point in time was used to it, but like I think like five separate people for a car journalist stopped me
Right.
and said, hey man, I love your work. The pilot on one of the planes was like, dude, big fan.
Oh, that's
um
awesome.
and my friend was like, what the, he has no idea because my friend's not in the car, actually he is in the
Right.
car, but he doesn't watch my stuff. Um and it was so video was huge. And then at some point, I can't keep track of who's on Motor Trend, but when Discovery Channel bought us, they said, "Hey, everybody who's on camera at Discovery Channel is talent. You're not staff. We have to fire you." And I really didn't want it. I fought against it. I was like, no, no, no. I wanna do it. And they said you have to. So I became a contractor, I think in 2018, and just every year I'd renew a contract. And then in
Mm.
February of 24, and again, what the contract was, I just had to do X, Y, and Z, and I was free to do whatever else, which allowed for Spike's Car Radio and whatever other nonsense
Yeah.
I was getting up to. And then in February of 2024, I think they were getting ready to sell Motor Trend again, so they wanted to like cut big contracts. So they just made me a freelancer, which opened up a lot more time. Um, and but it took me, like you mentioned, I started my own YouTube channel. I was just like not in shock, but I just kind of like was like, ooh, free time, and kind of did nothing for like 6 months, and I was like, oh god, I have no money. Like I better
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
better get off my ass and do something. So I'm doing that, and I got a bunch of other things going. But yeah, that's sort of my origin story up until present day.
Yeah. On the Angus thing, I always thought coming from our side, we start in the late '90s with Vortex, and I remember like my first Frankfurt, Chubba Cheddar giving us hell, like, "Who the hell are you, and why should anybody care?" You know,
Right.
and why would anybody click on an ad on your website? We thought we had this amazing space because the magazines would never put the websites ahead of the print because the print was the moneymaker, and I think Angus was the first person to really realize he needed a serious web presence, and that's really when we noticed the the traditional buffs getting in on the action that Jalopnik and Autoblog and others had already figured out.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was the first person to go from digital to print,
Yeah.
which was kind of a big deal. I mean, I lost friends like from the blogosphere
Really?
that were
Ugh.
like, "What are you selling out?" And I was like, well, "I'm gonna make more money doing what I love." Like,
Right.
and by the way, I'm gonna do the same thing. Um, and we're both on the same trips. How am I selling? Anyways. But no, Angus, again, another quote of his was that we are platform agnostic. We don't care the medium. And I remember, relaying a story to him, and I've told the story a billion times, but I think it was the 2007 Ford Mustang launch. And I was on that, and yeah, I'd been writing for Jalopnik for 2 years at this point or whatever, and this might have been in 2006. I don't remember exact time frame, but it was a big one of those big Ford cattle call press trips where 400 people go to, and I think we were just getting the specs of the new Mustang or something like that, right?
Right.
And we're at breakfast that morning, and I'm sitting. I don't know anybody, because I just, I was a blogger. I sat at home and wrote about cars, and I'm sitting at the table. I don't know who these guys were. They looked like me and you, old dudes with white beards,
Right.
and I'm like, I'm pretty young at this point, and they're sitting around at breakfast, and they're like, man, I can't wait till this whole like internet fad goes away because people really just want to look at cars and big glossy pictures. And I remember I'm like, in my head it was like the dinosaurs like making plans for after the asteroid. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, they just don't get it. They're
It's a
never
great
going to get it.
analogy.
The world has passed them by. And now I'm the old guy and I worry about the world passing. Like, I'm not
Yeah,
great on
dude.
TikTok. I'm not doing whatever the fuck. Sorry if I'm swearing.
That's right.
The oh god, Snapchat. I can't even name them. I don't know anything. I've never been on a dating app. I'm out of it.
Yeah.
Um, so I worry, and this you'll appreciate this. I was always the young guy, right? I was this up and gunner, all that stuff. People were annoyed that I existed. I was just an effing blogger, but I was also, making inroads, and so I always thought of myself as, the young guy. And this was last year at Pebble Beach, standing there, we're watching the Tour de Elegance. So that's where all the old cars roll by, and I don't remember what it was, but it was like, let's say it was a Delahaye or whatever. And I was standing with two kids in their 20s that were also journalists, and I'm like, oh, look at that, there's a Delahaye. And one of them goes, how do you even know what that is? And the other one goes, oh, because he was on the launch. And I was like,
What an asshole.
bro, I'm
I mean,
I'm still in my
excellent bird, but
yeah. Yeah, and I've been doing that for years to people where I'd be like, hey, do you remember that Lincoln thing? You were there, like, when he got shot, and that was my joke, and now I'm the joke. So
yeah,
yeah, but yeah, again, I just remember that moment so well when it was like a bunch of guys like, oh yeah, internet's a fad, and I'm like,
totally.
what planet is this?
Dude, I just remember that like 99 Frankfurt being in the bus with Chubba, and he
Yeah,
was like, he goes, how do you guys make money? And we said, well, we put ads on the site. And he goes, why would anybody ever click on one of your ads? and I don't know if you remember Jamie Vondrowski is my business partner. He was like,
sure.
Chubba, why would anybody ever call like the Corvette lady in the back of the in the back of the
Yeah,
magazine, right? Like,
right,
you better hope they do, or you're broke. And
right.
we're making it, so don't worry about us.
Yeah, I mean, look, and people, still to this day, it's rarer and rarer, but I wouldn't say still to this day. But I remember back in like 2010, 11. I mean, there was definitely like Motor Trend never did this, or at least in my tenure there. But like Car and Driver and Road and Track, I knew those people. They were like, well, this is like the premium stuff for the web, and for print, and this is stuff for the web, and it's written by like more junior, worse
Yeah.
people, and our A stuff goes into print. And we were like, this is crazy. Like, who cares how people read you?
Dude, I used to drive pretty regularly with Camisa back in those days. I only did the Audi events, so who knows? But on the Audi events, I drive with him, and I remember I think he was with Automobile at the time, and he would complain that like that was the good stuff was always getting held for print, and I was fine with that. Like, whatever, dude. I get it. Like sorry, because you got to deal with that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
good press.
yeah, and again, I mean, Angus, that was like, not to go into the weeds, but like, yeah, Gene Jennings ran Automobile,
Yeah.
and Angus ran Motor Trend, but Angus really was Gene's boss at some point, or at least it's shifted to that. And yeah, I mean, there was zero love lost between those two. Um, and she was just had a magazine background, and Angus, he also had a magazine background, but he had a newspaper
Sure.
background, and he just didn't care. He just wanted to get the best content into the most people's hands, which is a really smart strategy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It just
Well, and also just seeing pragmatically the way it's going. I think similarly, the other thing you said that I kind of keyed in on that I think is also breaks the mold for Angus is letting the personality lead. I mean, maybe that goes against like the old columnists in like the traditional car magazines in the 80s and whatever. But nowadays, you just don't really see it. And like occasionally when I do, especially look at the manufacturers, right? How much they could handle having like an in-house. I think Ray Schaefer at Porsche, when he was doing Porsche Classic before he went to Haggerty, was a good example of like a personality that was leading. We all kind of knew who Ray was, and he was approachable. But
yeah.
it's so rare that manufacturers do that. And of course, magazines did it long ago. But back then, it seemed
Yeah,
really
but
revolutionary.
but even like the current regime at Motor Trend, they really stress like don't say I drove the car, say we drove the car. I'm
Oh
like, well,
yeah,
we didn't do anything, I did it, and I fight with that. I mean, I'll get my stuff where like they'll edit like the top paragraph, changing everything to we because it's stylistically what they want now. Angus has been gone. He's like me now. He's a freelancer.
right.
Um, I mean, I guess in some ways somebody appreciates that rather than I. I don't see why. I don't get it. I don't see the difference, but whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, but he was really wanted, you know, he really wanted people to build their own brand. And again, it's hard for a lot of people. They just don't think that way. And but again, he was the one who, when we got the money from YouTube to launch the Motor Trend channel, he had all the shows ready to go. He had
did he?
Ignition, Head to Head, Roadkill, Epic Drives. Everything was just ready to go. We're just waiting for some funding. And so
Hmm.
he really was kind of a visionary. Not kind of. He was a visionary. I hate using that word. It sounds like something else. But he was ahead of everybody. And like
Right.
Car and Driver, for instance, got the same amount of money, right? And they did like a couple reviews with staff members, but they just basically like held a camera and a bunch of guys standing in a circle and like debating was the F-150 better than the Ram or whatever. And then they outsourced everything else. They literally took the money YouTube gave them and gave them to a production company who made like the worst videos in history. I mean, they were. I remember Calvin Kim when he was at Road and Track before he got laid off. He told me like because I was sitting there. I go, who at Road and or Car and Driver or whatever it was, they would put these videos up and the comments would be like, this is the worst video I've ever watched. And there was somebody there, it was like Car and Driver was like responding like, thank you for watching. And I'm like, who has to go through and do that? And Calvin's like,
Oh,
oh man, that's my job. Like,
I mean,
we do that. And I'm like,
that may not be a bad segue because I see a lot of these car. I mean, it may
yeah,
be where social media is today too, but I see a lot of these car manufacturers making posts, particularly about EVs, and then
mhm,
you look at the comments, and everybody is like, "I hate what you're doing. This
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah,
terrible.
yeah,
This
sure,
is awful." And
sure,
it's sad because there's just this disconnect between
yeah,
EV and enthusiast, and
yeah,
that's
yeah.
kind of the reason I reached out to you today too.
Yeah, I'm an enthusiast who also is very enthusiastic about electric vehicles because they're awesome. Like the 9,170 pound Cadillac sitting in my driveway right now.
You
Like
got that right now?
that thing is just yes,
Massive.
it is wonderful. What a vehicle. I get happy driving it. So yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, there's a huge disconnect, and that's okay, that's fine. But uh, before we get
Is
into
it?
it, I would also
Yeah,
say this though, like these same enthusiasts, uh, every time there was like, I don't know, an SUV posted, they would hate that too. And they,
right.
somehow enthusiasm has been a little corrupted into like, it's just fun to
Traditionalism.
hate stuff online.
Well, I
And
mean, that there's a long heritage of that too, right? Remember
yeah.
when what ABS and then ESP came out,
Oh,
and Patrick Bedard or
seatbelts.
right, yeah, and you would see the columns in Car and Driver, and they'd be like, I don't, this is terrible.
I look, not to pick on Car and Driver, wonderful people. However, no, I remember clearly in 2004, like just a year before I started doing this professionally, there was one issue of Car and Driver, and I subscribed, never subscribed to Motor Trend. Oh, it's Car and Driver, and like Chubba's column was the Prius sucks, and then oh god, I can see his face. Brock Yates's column was hybrids or a commie plot to take away your freedom. And then Patrick Bedard mathematically had proven that Prius will kill every single human on Earth, and our only salvation is more Hummers. And it was a single issue, and I remember I was like, "What is like? How about like? I don't like the way a Prius drives, but like it's hard to argue 55 miles a gallon. Like that's really
Yeah,
efficient.
and also the Prius, for whatever drivetrain it had, especially the first one, wasn't designed to be an engaging car. It was designed to be an appliance.
Look, every single thing about the Prius was sacrificed on the altar of efficiency,
Right.
and that was true of EVs before the Model S. EVs were just like, they're just trying to make a electric Prius basically, and then the Model S is like, oh, this thing could be good to drive if you want it to be. There's a lot of inherent goodness to driving an EV.
Yeah, yeah. What I'm moving towards is the Audi's Concept C and the 718 EV, and kind of what I think we're hoping that they become, because we don't know what they are yet. At least I don't. But I guess I want to start with that because I know you and I will probably have a difference of opinion on this. But at the same time, with your background with Inevitable, with your access that you have had driving all sorts of cars from all the EVs, including Cayman R or Concept R, right? Like that
I
Porsche.
got a ride and I didn't get to drive it, but I was in Spain and I got flung around a small racetrack in Mallorca in the Mission R.
That's
Uh,
it.
yeah, and yeah, oh man, like that thing was pretty cool. It was
Let's come back to
yeah,
that one, because that is one I'm genuinely curious about. I also want to state, while I was digging into this, as I know of you, you own a Rivian,
I do. I have an R1T. Yeah,
and also the Corolla GR
I have a GR Corolla. Yeah,
and a 914,
supposedly,
supposedly
allegedly,
Davy's
allegedly.
old car.
There's no proof of that, but yeah, David's old car.
Yeah. All right. So, but I mean, very wide spectrum just in your own personal ownership.
Yeah,
So, I guess then I'd say that, like, uh, what? Let me back up here. One other thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I remember a conversation you and I had on a plane once. I think we were going to I don't know, somewhere in Spain for an Audi launch, and
That's
we were,
that's where you go.
I know, right? Low liability laws,
It
and
was either
great
yeah,
tracks.
Spain or Portugal because neither has lawyers. Yeah,
Right, right.
yeah, yeah.
But we're talking Porsche 911s on the plane, and at the time, I think the 911 50 it wasn't like the new of the 911 breed, but it was relatively recent. And at the time, I think I recall you said it was your favorite of the
I loved it. I remember that year. It was like 2014, I want to say.
right.
It drove great, but also I just thought it was such a stellar design. And
Yeah,
I have a friend who has one. I see it every couple weeks and like, oh, I love that thing.
I agree 100%. I guess then what I'd ask is, like, what to you personally makes a good driver's car?
Oh, well, I'm not, as you might tell, or if you've listened this far, I'm not very orthodox in my beliefs. I can hold two thoughts in my head at the same time. Like, I love my Rivian. I couldn't imagine living without it. I also really love my GR Corolla. Not all cars have to be the same. You
Right.
know, I don't need to eat the same thing for dinner forever. But I mean, so many things make a good driver's car. I love huge horsepower. My Rivian has 835 horsepower. I'm super jealous that the Gen 2 truck has 1,025 horsepower. I have 908 pound-feet of torque. My God, I would love 1,200 pound-feet of torque like the new one has. I drove the Pininfarina Battista, which is about 1,900 horsepower. And people always say, like, well, what's enough horsepower? 1,900 is about right. That's about where you want to be. Um, again, like, we used to do a thing on Motor Trend, best driver's car, and
Right.
we would really go into the weeds, and we'd all, we'd be like we got to use our car of the year criteria for it and all this nonsense. But ultimately, it came down to, what gives you as the driver the most confidence to drive your hardest and fastest and best. And that could be many things. Like I drove, oh boy, I recently drove a 73 Porsche RS lightweight. So the RSL, super
Right.
rare, $2 million car. Man, that was a good driver's car. That was great. But I also drove the Bugatti Mistral, which is a $5 million 5,000 pound, you know, quad turbo, dual clutch, the polar opposite of the RSL, of the lightweight in every single way. And I frankly enjoyed it more driving it. You know, it was just fantastic to drive. So, yeah, it's hard. Confidence maybe is one definition. Also, something I think that makes you say "wow" out loud is a good
Right.
driver's car, and that's how like this Cadillac I have out front. I would, on a windy road, um, it wouldn't be a great driver's car, but on a freeway. And by the way, you probably spend a lot of your time driving on a freeway. It is the king. It is the ultimate
Isn't
driver's
it?
car going in a straight line. Oh, nothing. You literally look down on everything.
Yeah.
Looking down on Wagoneers. Super Cruise is like the greatest technology. You never touch the steering wheel. Air suspension, it's massive. So just like the luxury of the American idea of luxury of just
Right.
I'm just bigger than you are. Finally, great seat massage. Literally the best air conditioning I've ever experienced in my career life. Like it does it all. I was dropping my kid off at school this morning, right? And I
Right.
looked and I was at like I want to say 43% state of charge on the battery. 188 miles of range. I'm like, dude, I
That's
could literally get on the freeway and hands-free get to San Diego and
right.
just have to charge once I get there, and I only have to charge for 15 minutes because if I added, it's 120 miles to San Diego from LA or whatever it is, I just have to add 100 miles of range to get back up. Like it's just like wow. Like now
Right.
every enthusiast was that's not a driver's car. It's like, well,
Well, it's different purpose.
but I consider driving on the freeway, driving. Uh,
Right.
for the canyons, I'd pick something else. So it's yeah. So I don't know. That's maybe you'll say it's a wishy washy answer.
It's new. It's nuanced in that like there are all sorts of purposes that you could be using a vehicle for, and I agree with you. Although I think to a lot of like consumers, the difference between you're in and out of a lot of these cars, so you can go straight to what makes maybe
Sure.
best the freeway cruiser versus Newcomb's Ranch run, right? But I guess if you were to in daily life compare that caddy to say the R1S, you're
Yeah.
in an R1T, so basically similar now that they've updated the suspension for the
Yeah. Yeah.
R1S.
Yeah.
So like that's to most consumers, there's not a whole lot of air in between those two. Yet there is. If you're going to make a run up Newcomb's Ranch or just get through daily life, which one?
Like so, very specifically with those two, like the Rivian is about 75-80% as luxurious as the Cadillac. The Rivian, for whatever reason, they put a great interior into their R1 products. Really high. I remember I've told this story a zillion times, but I was on the launch recently of the new Range Rover Sport, and I can't remember the guy's name, but chief engineer of Land Rover for like 29 years. At this point, it was 27 years. And he's, I've known him and he follows me and he's like, oh, I saw you got a Rivian. He goes, we just got a Rivian. I go, oh, what'd you think? And he goes, yeah, we can't believe how good. And in my brain, it jumped to, they're going to say how good it is off road. And Land Rover is going to say, we can't believe how good the Rivian is off road. And he goes, we can't believe how good the interior quality is. Like
Huh?
for a first year automaker to get it that right, to make it that luxurious and
Yeah.
nice. And, and I was like, yeah, he's right. Um, yeah, look, if you said to me, pick one and that's your car and I Rivian all day, all night, 100%. But I was telling my wife, I said, man, if we had a lot of money, we would have this Cadillac. Like we would have
Right.
this Cadillac. And
Yeah. Well,
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
it's probably similar to a GT3 RS in that it's a very specific car for a very particular purpose, and that's where the Rivian is kind of more of an all rounder.
It's a giant Swiss Army knife. Yeah. Because again, the off-road ability, like I just had the GMC Sierra EV AT4, which is supposedly an off-roader. And so I shot a video. It's not out yet, but took my Rivian and both electric pickup trucks that are off-road intention, to a off-road park, and like, yeah, no, Rivian. Yeah, it wasn't even close. It was not even the same category of vehicle at that point. But I also, stupidly for fun, took went up Angeles Crest with the GMC, and it's on 18-inch off-road tires, but couldn't go over 49 miles an hour around any corner. Just couldn't do it. And the Rivian, I could chase 911s in that thing. And I I had some friends of mine were out from South Africa, and the husband, they're both car nuts, and the husband was like, no interest in EVs, mate, or whatever they say in South Africa, like could care less. And we were up at Newcomb's, and I said, you should drive my truck. I think you'd like it. He goes, no, literally no interest. I go, would you take a 5 minute ride with me? And this is a guy who sells Ferraris for a living, right?
Yeah.
Just take a 5 minute ride. We go, comes back, get out of the truck. He looks at me, he goes, I'd like to buy your truck. I go, exactly. So yeah, it's a Swiss Army knife. It does it all. It is a really cool vehicle. But also, I've told my wife if we had a lot of money, we would have a GT3 RS as well. So
Sure. Well, if I can have a whole fleet, I'm going to go for the best of the best in every segment. But
I literally told my wife I was borrowing. I'm lucky because the Mercedes Classic Center is here in LA.
yeah.
And they let me drive. They have this Mars Red, I think it is. It's a CLK Black Series,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, I was driving that around for a week. And I remember I turned to my wife and I'm like, "Listen, if you want this marriage to last, this is what it's going to cost."
CLK Black.
Yeah, and she was like, "All right, bye."
Well, how expensive are they nowadays? Are they depreciated?
100,
Uh,
something like that. I don't know exactly,
so
but
yeah.
but also it was the one that's been maintained by the Classic Center is
Sure.
much better than the one that you're finding
Yeah.
on
The
Facebook.
ratty one that's
Yeah,
beaten up by some kid.
yeah.
Yeah, no, so I had an R1S for a while, and I guess I would only say, like, I love the vehicle, other than it was an early one and the suspension over, like, they were doing this pavement in my town, and, you know.
Yeah, no, look, there's a big problem with the first year of the R1S, and they physically changed the suspension on the R1S then for Gen 2, and they didn't touch the suspension on the R1T because it was good. So,
Right.
yeah.
But I guess my only beef with it beyond that, which I could have probably lived with if they weren't redoing the roads in my town, but the other side of it was, again, I live in Northeast, right? So you were from New York at one time, right? So you know what it's like, right? Way worse than I have it probably. But in that regard, it's when I say too fast, I like fast if I'm in like the desert, right? Or here on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, but around town, I don't need it. And between that and the weight, the handling, like how quickly I will go through tires, it just seemed like there's a real associated cost with.
So I will tell you. So that's a myth that weight has anything to do with tire wear, and and all of your readers can go prove it for themselves, or your listeners. Here's how you do it: go talk to anybody who owns a big dually, right? So big dualies make massive horsepower,
Yeah.
torque. They make massive torque, right? And they weigh a lot. And ask them if do the rear tires wear more than the front tires? In other words, do the massively torqued driven wheels wear
Or
faster? So
faster.
yeah, so and this was told to
Yeah.
me by a dude from Tire Rack, and he says it's a myth that weight wears tires. It's not weight; it's torque. Torque wears.
Although, sure, but do a track day in a Lotus whatever versus a
Sure.
an RS6, right? And you're going to have a considerable difference in tire wear if you're doing fast laps.
Again, check the fronts. They'll be worn the same. The driven wheels will wear more. It's torque. Now, does weight have nothing to do with it? No, but like my Rivian, which 7,000 pounds or whatever it weighs, the tires I have on there right now are 25,000 miles on them. They're fine. They're literally fine. It's a myth. It's a pervasive myth that weight is wearing out EV tires. It's torque. EVs make massive torque, but
Yeah.
so do sports cars. So do dualies. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and this whole like crying about weight. Like, well, no one's crying about like what full size trucks weigh.
Yeah,
You know,
but okay, but even before we got into EVs, Colin Chapman had a thing right about
Yeah,
weight.
yeah. Colin Chapman was trying to he would lose a driver every month. So he instead, I'm a giant cheap ass who won't engineer my cars. Oh, I mean simplify and add lightness. Like how many ask Jim Hall's family about Lotus. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure, but that doesn't necessarily negate the impact of weight on, say, 911s or anything else out there, right? Like
I
weight
mean,
definitely makes a difference in handling and
In what way? I mean, the GT3 RS weighs 3,400 pounds. You know, a classic Porsche people cream themselves about, like me included, weighs 2,000 pounds. Want to race?
Yeah, but you're dealing with aero, you're dealing with
Uh,
contact patch.
want to race? And you know what I mean? Like weight's a thing, but you can engineer around weight. You know, it's one variable of many. You know, and it
Sure.
does affect everything. Hey, look, I'd love EVs to be lighter, and new battery tech is going to make them lighter. And by
Yes.
the way, you know, transmissions and engines weigh a lot. Electric motors don't weigh a lot. Like the
Right.
Lucid, you know, the current Lucid motor and transmission is, you know, it's 180 pounds. It's the battery that's heavy. And by the way, that'll change. There's new battery tech coming online. So now they're heavy, true. Um, but back to what you were saying, you know, what most people wear their Rivian tires, just so you know, is they put it in efficiency mode or whatever it's called, and that
You
it
get negative
cambers the
camber.
tires, so you're
Yeah.
cambering the tires. But yeah, if you drive around on all purpose, and again, I mean, you know, anyone who wants to come and measure my tires, they're aftermarket tires. They're really good tires. They're Toyo Open Country threes, but 25,000 miles, and I rip the thing on a weekly basis. Uh,
Right.
you know, we use it. It's now for my YouTube channel. It's my camera car. You know, so it's chasing sports cars once a week.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
All right. Well, I guess I'd ask then, because I'm slowly moving you towards the fake gear thing.
for years.
But before I do, I guess I would ask you before we mire it down in the philosophical discussion about that what to you, having driven the world's best performance cars and having driven and drivers cars and having driven a lot of
And the world's
EVs.
worst. Sorry, George. And the world's worst. I've driven them all.
Great, even better. So
Yeah.
so what would make an EV a better driver's car that's more engaging to drivers today, right? Like that I think that aficionados, car enthusiasts can get their heads around, like getting into it and caring, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like this weasel word engagement. Like, what does that mean? You know? And for a lot of people, it's very easy. And you know, this hit with the 991 when they came out with that 7-speed manual, which was just a bad transmission. It just sucked as a manual. If you really tried to shift fast, you'd miss gears because um, they had reverse, first, third, fifth, and seventh were all forward positions. So you had 5 forward positions. No other transmission in the world ever had that. When Chevy made their 7-speed for the Corvette, reverse was down. So they only had 4 forward positions. And it just meant you couldn't be precise. It was just a lousy transmission. At the same time, they developed that PDK, that generation of PDK, their dual clutch, which was the best.
Right.
And my enthusiast friends were like, oh, I'm getting the manual. And I'm like, dude, it's the same gearing as the PDK. So third gear is good to 113 miles an hour. What the fuck do you need the other 4 gears for? You know, like what track, you know? And so it was just a bad thing to buy. And people would still buy it because they're enthusiasts. It was more engaging. You know, and I'm like, no, like the PDK was more engaging. You know, you like instant shifts, you know, be in the gear you want. And again, leading up to our argument, I would say, like, you know, get rid of gears. That really makes it engaging. 'Cause then you're just focused on like
Does
a
it?
time, you know.
But
And
we were talking about the Mission R earlier. What I mean that one notably had straight cut gears, right?
super loud, kind of an awful sound. Actually, I would have said, like, you know, if it wasn't a race car, like, yeah, you know, do something.
Right.
Sound dampening. That was an interesting car. So I've driven in, let's say, like I remember I was in a BMW DTM car, right? Which it was an M4, maybe M3, M4, I think it was. And I think because of the series, it actually had less horsepower than the contemporaneous M4 had. So in a straight line, whatever. But the braking and the cornering was on slicks, and it had hundreds and, you know, 1,000 pounds stripped out of it. The braking and the turning was insane, like absolutely insane. Um, and so that always stuck with me. Like, and I've experienced that with like an Audi R8, whatever GT3. If you're in this business, you get a lot of hot laps and a lot of performance cars,
Right.
and it's usually not the acceleration that wows you; it's the cornering and the braking, right? Well, the Mission R was like the acceleration is now wowing me because you had this like instant EV acceleration. So you're just hyper launching off a corner. It's just a if you haven't ever taken an EV on a track, it's just a different experience. And again, because it's not a very big battery, it was a very lightweight thing. They never, I don't remember what it was, but it was very light. It was under 4,000 pounds. So you're just constantly on a roller coaster, getting whipped around this thing. And it helped. I think I had oh God, I'm blanking on his name. Jesus. Uh,
Bergmeister.
no, it wasn't him. It wasn't York. It was Burned. The guy who did the 919 around the Nurburgring in Sanity
Timo?
lap.
Timo Bernhard?
It's Timo. Yeah, Burn. I knew Burn was in there somewhere. Timo was driving me, so that helps too. But
Right.
um,
Do you think it had? I guess I'm curious, having been in that car, did the maybe not the straight cut gear sound, but did the it having gears offer anything to the engagement of that car?
it didn't have gears. It had a gear. So all
Okay.
EVs have one gear, right?
Okay.
This had two because it had two motors. So it never changed gears. It was just that
You
there is every
just
EV
had a
has a
whine.
transmission, right?
Yeah.
There's only one gear ratio, except for notably the Taycan. Just on the rear motor does have a two-speed transmission, and the new electric G-Wagon has a transfer case on each motor, so it has
Huh.
it has eight gears,
Yeah.
but it has four two-speed transmissions or transfer cases. Um, and this didn't change gears; it just had really loud gears. They were straight cut. Um, and yeah, so it was yeah, it was cool. It was very loud though. It was an incredibly horrible experience, audibly.
Oh, yeah. I think that's the challenge, right? We haven't really found a medium yet where there is a nobody wants a fake tone, but like a if there's a genuine tone and it's some sort of
Well,
mechanical audible.
I will say this. So I was at Rennsport a couple years whenever they did that last year, and I happened to be hanging out with Andy Pruinger, who's the head of Porsche GT3 development or GT development, whatever he does. And he's a big pickup truck guy, and famously he has a Ram in Germany. Um, and I was telling him about my Rivian, which I happen to have up there. So I let him drive it, and he was like, "This is great." He goes, first thing he says is, "There's no fake sounds at Porsche. We're making all these stupid fake sounds, and you had the whine of four electric motors, which is just what they sounded like, and it was fine. It was just totally fine as is." And also, I will say this current new obsession with how a car sounds. I mean, you're old enough to remember, like, cars didn't make a lot of noise like 15 years ago. You go jump into like a Diablo SV from the mid 90s. It's got a V12. Doesn't make any noise, you
Right.
know. I think like Jaguar sort of like started it just by like making those insane snap crackle pop noises, and then everybody started copying it. Porsche still, they don't care. Their 911 still don't sound great. Like, I guess GT3 sound pretty good, but
Yeah.
it's the sound of a flat six.
It's
Uh,
funny you say that. One year we were at Monterey, and I was staying in a house with one of the guys from Audi, and uh, we both had RS3s, right? Like the brand RS3 had just come out, the first one, and I had a press card, and he had one out of their fleet, and we were leaving to go somewhere at the same time, and he fires his up, and I fire mine up like momentarily, and then they had the exact pop, like as much as it seems rowdy and just authentic, it at the same time was completely engineered and
yeah,
timed to be exactly
no,
the same.
exactly. It's built in. I mean, look, Ferraris for a long time have sounded great, and actually, my colleague, former colleague Kim Reynolds, when he was at Road and Track, he actually took sound sample and sent them off to like a musicologist or whatever, a guy with a PhD in music, and he compared them to like brass instruments, like different car exhausts, and it was like like a Porsche Turbo was like the equivalent of static. It was a whereas like I think it was a Ferrari, I think it was a 355, was a lot like a trombone.
Yeah.
had that quality to it, just okay. But they weren't crazy loud, and this
Right.
whole and I've really noticed like it's really become a thing that like all what I really care about suddenly is how cars sound, It's like, so I always go back to like I talk to race car drivers who they drive faster than us. They wear helmets with earplugs in them. All they care about is torque on the rear axle and a front end that doesn't give up. They just don't want any understeer, and they want massive torque pushing the car.
Yeah.
And they
I
don't.
don't know if you remember Ulrich Baretsky at Audi Sport.
I know. I remember him. I met him years ago. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, engine engineer. But I remember, I think it was in Truth in 24 or something, when the R10 came out, right? It was very quiet. And
Silent.
yeah, and that
Yeah.
was kind of his contention. Is like that noise is just energy we're losing, right? Like it's
Look. I will say this. I 100% agree with him. However, I remember watching the Audis run at Le Mans, and like, man, the Corvettes were exciting. Because the Corvettes made a lot of
yeah,
noise. So for the audience, like, it's great. But uh, it's not everything. I think like to not buy a car because it's like people with the Ferrari F80. Like, oh, like I don't like how it sounds. I went on that launch and I talked to them about it, and they said, well, like noise regulations really suck globally now, and we don't want to make different cars for different markets, so we just didn't emphasize sound at all. And really, what you hear when the car goes by at speed is the sound of the aerodynamics. Inside, you can hear the engine. We
right,
let the driver hear it, and it sounds really good. Uh, Again, most of the guys who are saying they don't like the way the F80 sounds are Porsche 911 owners who have a six-cylinder engine, so the
right.
hypocrisy is boundless. But yeah, it sounds really good inside the F80. I was in it. It sounds great. From the outside, you hear like a small tornado whizzing by you because it really is like an aero
Right.
car.
Well, how do you show off when you're leaving Cars and Coffee if it's that quiet though?
I know, but you're right. Like with the gasoline engine, and no one likes hearing this, but like with a gas engine, when you burn the gas, 20% of the energy in the gasoline is used for forward propulsion, and 80% is heat and noise. And it is the sound of inefficiency. Where an EV motor is, the electricity, 60% is used for forward propulsion, and the rest is heat and a little heat and noise. The advantage of EVs though is when you get off the throttle, it can recuperate, it can
Yeah,
regenerate electricity. So an EV can be 80 to over 90% efficient, and
right.
that's the real advantage of EVs from a just a top down perspective. That's why they're great. Is they're just
Yeah.
much more efficient.
Okay, so if I don't necessarily agree with you, but if I agree with your contention that then the noise is largely about, if I'm reading you correctly, the noise is largely about the display or the
Yeah,
feelings and not
yeah,
that you want to tell me about the horsey horseless?
yeah, yeah. So I think it was 1902. And people were cars that were catching on, shall we say? Famously, cars were invented in 1886, but they really didn't catch on till like 1902, 1903, 1904, depending on what country. And so these dudes at this company, Horsey, they had this idea like, well, how do you convince people to give up their horse and buggy and purchase an automobile, which is more expensive, and you got to buy gas. A horse can just eat grass or whatever. So they said, what we're going to do is a couple of concerns back then was that cars will scare people, or sorry, cars will scare horses. So if we stuck a horse head on the front of it, it won't scare horses that are coming towards the buggy. But also for the driver, it'll feel familiar. It'll just be like your horse and buggy. And yes, it's a car, but it looks like a horse. And I think George, where you're going with this is how I feel about fake gears and
Yeah,
fake noises on an EV. It's just 1895. Sorry. uh, this is the same thing. It's like it's ridiculous. It's just like you're trying to convince EV haters to buy an EV. You're trying to convince horse and buggy drivers who hate cars to buy a car.
right.
You get the horsey horseless.
Well,
So
I
I
dug these
see
up
no
before
difference.
the call. I do think it's funny. One of the sales point is would fool horses. I wonder how a horse would feel about a decapitated horse coming towards it. Like that would disturb me if I were a horse. I don't. I don't know.
I mean, yeah. Also, I'm trying to read the small print of this ad. It says something about 1904. I feel like I was, yeah, that's when it was
Yeah.
introduced. Oh no, that's Haviline. Okay. All right, I take it back. I was off by a few years. So 1895. So 9 years after the car was invented, the horsey horseless came out, and fake gears. The Model S. I'll call it the
I'm
first
in.
real electric car. Model S was 2012, 13, and the first fake gears was the Hyundai Ioniq N in 2024. So it took 11 years for fake gears to show up. So it's even slower than the adoption of the horsey horseless. Um,
So I have not driven a 5N. I've just heard you guys who have.
yeah.
I'm curious what your thoughts are on that car.
I've driven it. I thought, it's a great car. I think it's a great car. I think it has, not only does it have the sound of a Hyundai Elantra N can be piped in, but then it has two fake, like a fighter jet sound and like a space laser sound, or you can turn it off and just you got nothing, which is great. That's how I liked it. And then the fake gears, like it just slows the car down. I read a lot of people who are on the launch, like parroting, shall we say, what the PR people were explaining to them, which is like, oh, it's more engaging. I think the big thing is with the fake gears on, it's 2 seconds slower per lap than with the fake gears off.
Right.
So it just,
But if it's about, I mean, it's the difference. I mean, we go to something perhaps more familiar. It's the difference between a GT3 RS and say an ST or a GT3 Touring, right? Like the RS is going to be faster on the track. It's got the aero, it's got the right transmission. However, there's something about that's appealing to driving enthusiasts, particularly driving enthusiasts who are spending most of their time on the road, about
yeah.
a GT3 Touring or an ST.
Again, that's a great transmission. That's a great manual transmission.
Yeah.
So I see that argument. It's not like the regular 911 where it's a lousy transmission. And by the way, I'm right. They got rid of the 7-speed,
Right.
the 992.2. They put a 6-speed in. So I get that argument. These fake gears aren't that great. They don't work so well.
Right, but
Uh,
is it okay? So could the fake
but
gears?
also, it's really stupid. It just slows the car down. I guess.
But so does the manual on the ST.
Not really, honestly. If you look at GT3 and the GTK with manual and PDK, they're kind of the same speed. They're not. We actually had both cars and tested both, and like on our figure eight, I think actually the manual was like a tenth of a second quicker, probably because it was a little bit lighter. And
Figure eight. Are you shifting much on the?
no, not shifting a whole bunch. Yeah,
But I mean, then it's not going to make much of a
yeah.
difference.
You are shifting. I mean, there are
Okay.
shifts. It's just I think you had to use like I forget. It was whatever. It is a different rear mechanical. I like the way the mechanical locker feels on the manual versus the hydraulic locker, hydroelectric locker on the PDK cars. I like that rear end better. So I get that argument. There's no, like, again, it's just like you drive the Ionic N with, like, no gears because it doesn't have any, and
Right.
it's great. You turn on the fake gears and it makes it worse to drive. So
So arguably, I think you just said this. I'm just confirming. The N is
Yeah.
really the first car to approach trying to make a fake gear for the average consumer.
yeah,
EV.
I believe so. There might be others, but as far as I know, that's true.
Right. So
CVTs have done fake gears
Yeah.
horribly for a decade.
yeah, that was just
No,
trash.
no difference in my mind.
Yeah, those were trashed.
It's the
for
same
sure.
thing, though. It's the same thing.
But
You're
yeah,
trying to be something you're not. It doesn't have gears. Why would you have gears?
well, because
Have
where I would
gears.
argue that the difference of trash between a CVT and an EV is that a CVT is either a belt driven, so you've got rubber banding and other things that kind of muck it up, right? But even the chain ones that like Audi had weren't really like it. I don't think the baseline technology it's already not great compared to EVs. I think there is solid drivetrain technology there, right? Like so.
Yeah, so you're making it worse. You're literally adding in something to like slow the car's forward momentum down.
I guess what I'm saying, you're
to
backing
do
off,
something that cars that have gears do. These are cars that don't have gears.
right?
Why would you want? It doesn't have them. It doesn't need them.
But I guess, well, I think I have my own reasons. I'll give you those in a minute. But I guess where
yeah.
I'm going is it possible that the end, before we move on from that, is more the Porsche 7-speed that sucked versus, like, if you refine that system, it's a first try. If a company like Porsche, or, you know, obviously we're going to get 718 here. If a company like Porsche took a run at something like that, you know, where Hyundai isn't necessarily they're coming along with their end branding and their product, but Porsche clearly has a much longer reputation in that
Sure.
space.
Yeah, no, the Porsche's great. Yeah.
So if they were to take a run at it, perhaps something a little bit more.
But why? But I don't. I'm still trying. Like,
I've got
why
a couple.
shift when you don't need to shift?
I've got a couple cases I'll make to you.
Okay.
First of all, is more philosophical, not really having to do with driving, but as far as engagement, right? You're a fan of filmmaking and storytelling, correct?
Sure.
All right. So the Avengers, right? The Avengers. If we just tell you Thanos won or Thanos lost, whichever one you're watching, right?
Okay.
You don't have the sound effects to make it thrilling. You don't have the stakes being risen and kind of build up to
Sure.
the finale. You just have, oh, cool, he won or he lost. That's end of story. I know what happened. That's EV, right? There's no building of stakes. There's no shift, right? You don't have, like, what's
Shifting is building of stakes. Shit. Look, a transmission is a band-aid on a terrible powertrain for an automobile, right?
right.
The engines don't spin fast enough, so you got to gear them. It's all it is.
That's mechanically, that's what that is. Certainly, I don't disagree.
We can romanticize that, or you can just say, like, I've never been accelerating in an EV and enjoying it, and thought to myself, God, I wish this would get interrupted for a second so it feels like a Dodge Charger. You know what I mean? Like, I like just going fast. I
Sure.
You ever been on a roller coaster, like going down the hill, and you're like, God, I wish this acceleration would hiccup a little bit. Like, no, it's the thrill of the drop.
Let
Let's
me give
go.
you a more bizarre analogy that might be a
Okay.
little bit creepy. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's your podcast, so I'll just go out of frame if it's super creepy. But oh boy, if this is sexual, I hate
It-
doing sex in cars.
All right. No,
I
yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to
cars. I hate doing, like, it's like a hot young, like
No. But there is think about, if you think about that act, right? There is something to noise, to repetition, to build up. It's a very basic
Sure.
human
Yeah.
experience, right?
Yeah.
And so when you have the shifting and kind of a technique and a buildup of sound, right? There is, just like elevating stakes in storytelling. You're bringing people to a work for it versus just it's on and it's done. Because if you're with somebody who's just it's on and it's done, it's boring as hell, right?
I mean, again, like, it's so weird to me that, like, car journalists spent forever arguing that, like, huge horsepower is cool, breaking the speed limit's great, and then this new technology shows up. They don't really understand it, and they feel threatened by it, so they have to go out of their way to, like, there's too much power suddenly. It was
Right.
never too much power. I remember, I was there. I read all your goddamn articles, and
Yeah.
also. Go back into what I was saying about, car and driver and, like, hybrids of the devil. Nowadays, your average car journalists are like, "Oh no, hybrids and plug-in hybrids are great. I just don't want full EV."
That's
20
because-
years ago,
That's
20
because
years
it's
ago,
the devil they know, right?
yeah,
Like,
20 years ago, you hated hybrids.
Yeah.
I read your stories, man. I got the receipts. So it's just, I think it's like,
also, an e-hybrid Panamera is not a Prius, right? Like, they're very different. We have better hybrids.
exactly. A Model S is not whatever it's not a Nissan Leaf,
Right.
It's and by the way, like, using your horrible sex analogy, hating EVs is just kink shaming, man. Like,
Fair. All right.
I like what I like. Now, am I denying that, like, a Porsche 997 GT3 RS 4.0 is that the ultimate driving experience? Like, yeah, it probably is. It's
Right.
freaking great, man.
What makes it the ultimate driving experience, though?
Just the intent behind that car, the engineering, it's so good. I don't remember what it sounds like. I just remember the go and how awesome it was. It was great. Look, it was a race car that had a license plate. Is what makes it the ultimate driving experience.
I'll tell you, dude. I haven't spent time in an RS or an RS 4.0, but I have a 964, right?
Yeah.
And I love the thing, and I love it because it's so basic analog. Like, when I get in it, if I'm at a Cars and Coffee or whatever, it's got just the right exhaust note where it's not obnoxious, but it's noticeable. And
Yeah.
I get it on in some curves, and there's a dance to it. There's an art to it that
Yeah.
like I could be there in like my current daily is an SQ8, right? So I could be there in the SQ8, but it's not the same. And
Right.
while I love the SQ8 and it's an excellent daily and can cruise down the highway and get my
Sure.
kids to soccer and whatever,
Yeah.
the 964 has this sort of guttural thing that like I can't really explain. I just know it's so satisfying, and it's not that fast. It doesn't need to be. I can still have
Yeah.
fun and around here in my town and in Podunk,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. I'm not going like I got a buddy who has a 992 GT3 or had one, and I spent a little time in it. It's a great car, but the I'm at such stakes when I'm having fun in that car where I can go out in the 964 and not risk my license and not, granted there are other, that car had downforce
Yeah.
and ESP and whatever, but I
Sure.
don't
Yeah.
know.
Hey, look, I'm not invalidating your experience with the 964. They're great. I was just telling you, like, I drove this RS Lightweight, which was like
Right.
mind blowing. I'm just saying that because that's true that you love your 964 doesn't mean I don't love this Escalade IQL. It
Uh,
doesn't mean my
for the,
my freeway experience with it is like, my God, do I just love being in this thing, and
yeah,
like, and it's just such a great experience. And I just had this little company down in San Diego, McKellos. They make these little, I don't know, they call it the ST, but it's like, it's a hot rod 72 911 with a 3.5, great interior, and like scratched every air cooled itch I've ever had. Like I thought I wanted to go to the grocery store in it because it was so tiny, it's easy to park and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think one invalidates the other. Now you get to the point where you say, well, like, what about choice, man? You're trying to take away our 911s. Like, I've never said that.
no,
Uh, I
that's not the
think,
contention I'm making. A lot of car guys are. I guess where I'm going at
yeah,
it more is for us to move forward. I see
yeah,
this kind of break in the auto industry where like you have all the car people, whether they're inside engineers at car companies or whether they're enthusiasts, kind of like getting on the last possible. It's like after the Titanic, they're just climbing up on the crates and sticking with the internal combustion cars. And
sure.
so what you're left with in a lot of cases in the offices of production offices of these companies, people developing the electrics are the people who are really focused on appliance cars are also that to a lot of people, right? They are that Cadillac, and it's an amazing thing. It's
Well,
just not.
I would say the Cadillac's a lot more than appliance, but if I can cut you off, and I'm sorry to do
Yeah,
that, I'm trying to take your RAV4 away from you and make it better.
right,
I want your RAV4 to have 500 horsepower. I don't want you to have to deal with the horrible sounds of a 2.4 liter Atkinson cycle Toyota motor. Garbage. What a horrible experience. I want to give you a better driving experience by just putting in an average EV powertrain into your RAV4. It would improve it in every. Do this. All you auto journalists listening to this, go get the new Toyota Prius Prime. That's the plug-in hybrid, 70 miles on EV only, right? And then the engine kicks on. As an EV, what a great car. The second that trash motor turns on, it's awful. I want to get rid of the awful. I like, in my future world, there'll be a lot of V12s. I think,
right,
rich are getting richer. They can buy whatever they want. The V12, there's more of them now than ever. 2025 will probably be the biggest year for V12s in history. But back in the 80s, there was like none. They made 100 Countachs a year. Uh,
right.
how many V12s are made this year by Bentley alone? Although I guess they're getting rid of them. But my point is, like, I think like the hypercar engines aren't going anywhere, and they're driven so little, they don't really make a ton of CO2. Like, one of my favorite stats is the Aston Martin Valkyrie. I think sum total of all the Valkyrie motors will be 285 Valkyrie V12s. They created more CO2 emissions testing the Valkyrie engine on a engine dyno than all 285 motors will do throughout their lifetime. So there's no problem with the Valkyrie V12,
Right.
but it's the RAV4, those little crappy four cylinders that suck.
Sure.
Get rid of those, and hey, let's make less CO2 in the process.
But okay, so that's probably a good segue. We can't all have Valkyries, and
Exactly.
we can't all have 718s either. But there is a car there where up until very recently. I mean, there's some rumors around that now too, and I'd love to touch on that. But the 718 is a car that, as of a month or two ago, was going to end production in October and be replaced by an EV. And I think that's where you start to. It's not the Rav4s. I think anybody is going to lament when they're gone. But the
Oh,
718
I know
perhaps.
that. I know that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And that's where, like, getting car enthusiasts to get that, like,
Sure.
there's a future and it's not just
Yeah.
RAV4 EVs. Right.
Yeah, and look, I think we were sort of beating around the bush. Like, yeah, Porsche a couple days ago said they're gonna continue. I don't know what they said, but 718 will have an internal combustion engine going forward. They just announced that. Now, Porsche's on their ass. No one's buying Porsches right now except for
Right.
911s. And yeah, they're changing strategy midstream, which is fine. I would say this though, they don't make any money off the 718. The 911 outsells the 718 9-1, I believe. Um, I guess they're thinking that no one's going to buy an electric Cayman Boxer. Could be true. Almost nobody buys 718s, especially with the much hated 2.4 liter turbo motor, which everyone across the board hates. Um,
Why hate it? I've not driven one, but I have a friend who had one. He liked it. Same guy
oh,
who had the GT3.
I mean, it's just the sound thing. It's just how good could a 2.4 liter turbo sound? Like, not
Yeah.
very good. You
Sounds like a
know,
Subaru.
it just doesn't sound. Yeah. And it was a pretty dopey engine. Honestly, it wasn't a great engine. Um, uh, but no one bought them. It wasn't like you know
Right.
So I would say, how do I put this? I think Porsche, they're in the money making business, not the car making business, and they're scared.
Yeah, but
Rightfully
they're
so.
also facing a mandate in Europe.
Yeah, and also, if you want to sell cars in China, you got to be EV. So yeah, I don't know. I think everyone's prejudging the electric Cayman that no one's driven, which I think is insane. Why would you ever prejudge a car? I know why
Right.
people do it. Let's see what it is. I have a feeling, Porsche could make it great. I would also say though, if you look at like the Macan and the Q6, which are on the PPE platform, which was Audi.
Right.
Uh, they're kind of not great. At least the Porsche one's kind of dull. And uh, that's a problem. If it has a
Do you,
Porsche badge, it should be exciting.
do you
You
know
know,
offhand I've heard it. I'm familiar with the rumors of what the 718 EV is, but do you know the platform that's on or the component
I
set?
thought it was PPE. I thought it was the same component set as Macan.
I'd heard that, and I'd also heard SSP, which is the new scalable
Okay.
systems platform, right? That's going to be everything from Polo to Bugatti, they say.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's the Rivian based stuff. Could be that
Right.
too.
But then Cocker said it was SSP wasn't ready and it wasn't Rivian based, right? Like so Porsche moved forward with this new, I forget what they call it, what Cocker's name for it was, but it was a kind of its own architecture. And one of the fundamental differences, I'm going to make some leaps here, and you probably know better.
Oh, I don't know anything. Go ahead. Go.
So one of the differences between either PPE or SSP is that it's not a roller skate. It's got the battery behind the passenger driver.
And that's what Mission R had. Yeah, was
Right.
where the engine went was where the battery sits, so you get a low floor. Yeah, yeah,
Right, exactly, which is the challenge and why everything's, it seems, is a crossover for the most part.
yeah.
But okay, so that what I wonder then is I've been hearing rumors for a while, really since last summer, that there would be some sort of internal combustion pivot to Porsche, whether or not Audi's included TBD. But to that end, wouldn't, and I think I remember seeing a news story that they were going to retrofit engines in electric cars like the Macan, and that doesn't make sense. That platform's not really set up for that, other than maybe like Scout's toying with a range extender in the back,
Yeah, yeah.
So if this is a standalone architecture that Porsche did, and the weight is in the rear, one wonders if it wouldn't be cheaper to, if they're not going to just put lipstick on the older what is it 982 718 and keep that going alongside. This would be probably the architecture that would make the most sense to retrofit an internal combustion engine into.
I mean, it's easier with a mid-engine car than a front-engine car, because firewall and passing exhaust pipes and transmission tunnels and all that. With mid-engine, you just kind of redo the rear of the car, so it's possible. I would guess what they would actually do is do what Nissan did with the Z platform and just do a third gen off the existing platform. Not that 991 or sorry 981 to 982. It's kind of right. It's
Kind of
kind of
similar anyway. All right.
yeah. It's kind of so just do 983 or whatever the hell they're gonna call it. Um, I would guess that's what they didn't say. They just said it's gonna. I saw a little weird slideshow clip where they said there's gonna be a ICE 718 going forward.
Right.
I would guess they just kind of keep it. They just do another refresh on that platform. I think that taking an EV thing, it's just not set up for internal combustion if it's really EV only. But what do I know? I don't
Well,
know.
if the motor and the batteries are in the rear, it almost seems like modular. Like, remember how like the Boxster versus the 911 originally was right? They just changed the rear architecture of the car, but everything
Yeah.
cabin forward was the same.
Yeah, I don't know enough about it. And again, we're speculating on like an electric
Totally.
platform that no one's seen, so I don't know. I would guess they just, because it's not a big money maker. They just, if it was 911, that's a different story, but they just don't sell 918s, sorry, 718s in any volume that I would just guess they would just, for the ICE one, they would extend it. And that would probably, the customers would probably be great with that.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
I,
I do want to part. On one hand, I was like, maybe they should just take the old architecture like they did with like, I don't even remember in the old days with Volkswagen, they would take like the B1 Audi platform and ship that to Brazil and make a Volkswagen Fox, right? Or send the
exactly.
Santana to China or whatever.
Yeah.
But I guess it's like taking the 718, the 982 platform and shipping it to the US and making an America Roadster here. You know what I mean? Like
I mean, that's sort of where the political winds are blowing. Yeah,
it does seem that way.
yeah, it does seem that way. So I don't know. It's just yeah. I would love to get a handle on what the electric Cayman Boxster will be. I have no idea.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, look, we're definitely in this timeline now where EVs. The growth rate has slowed for a whole bunch of reasons. But again, and I know I'm out here in La La Land, but like California has what we've sold. I was just looking this up the other day. It's it for the last 12 quarters, so 3 years, over 20% of the cars purchased new in California have been electric. So that hasn't slowed. In fact, like the last quarter of 24 was like over 20. It was like 21 point something percent, and the most recent quarter was like still over 20%. So I don't know. I when I look around, and I know I'm different than the rest of the country for sure, but when I look around, like EVs are freaking everywhere. It's
Yeah.
just like, and
Now
it
that
looks like General Motors is winning the war because like the amount of Cadillacs, Chevys, Hondas, and Acuras I see that are electric. And we must have like smoking lease deals on them. But hey, that's how you've always sold a lot of cars is smoking lease deals.
right. Well, the bottleneck seems to be public charging, right? Like I've got my first e-tron in 2019. I've
Yeah.
had we still have an e-tron. We've had that the whole time. I had the Rivian for a while. The fundamental difference to us, obviously, we were charging at home or at work all the time with the e-tron,
Yep.
so nobody cares. And when
Right.
we would take long trips in the e-tron, like in the early days, no, like there were always, every like while Electrify Americas weren't always reliable in those early days,
Yeah.
they were largely empty and nobody else there. And
Right.
like the last time I went to New York State on a college visit with my kid, and it was so irritating because every time I would stop, I was waiting for a charger for like 15, 20
I,
minutes just to get on the
I,
charger.
I literally just wrote a column about this saying that urban areas need denser level 3 charging.
Well, and I took my Rivian down to visit a friend in DC, and I like on the weekends these charge because all these people who live in apartments who have these cars and can't charge their cars during the week are all like every highway that has like for long transit people. Now you're waiting for like all the locals to charge because they live in apartments.
Yeah.
It's
Well, so it's funny. So what the solution to this is sadly is a political solution, and they did it in Norway. So they said we're getting rid of gas cars, and you can't buy any new gas cars, and everybody must have a charger. And so every single parking spot at every single apartment in Norway has a charger.
right,
And a little different. What they do is they have a box, and then you keep the cable in your car, and so you plug it into your car and the charger. It's not cabled as we do. But they this year, January 1st, you can no longer buy a gas car in Norway. Oh, guess what? Norway has huge distances and it's really, 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 really cold. Now, it's so cold that everybody has indoor parking. But you could still put boxes, but it's in LA, California, I should say, it's worse here because our real estate's so expensive. So like almost, I think it's like 44% of people are renters here. So
Right.
the chargers are really impacted by the bottleneck, and it's and I can charge at home. I'm very lucky, but I wrote this column because I was like, I have this giant battery on this GMC. I'll just go fast charge it. I'll pay the money. It's worth my time just to go fast charge it. And like, I drove to four different charging places and like, two EAs, one EVgo, and one Shell recharge, all full. Couldn't do it, and I went home and charged. I'm lucky I have a home and a charger, but I was like, this is insane. And it's just getting worse by
Yeah.
the minute. And like places like Vegas, forget about it. Like everybody who has an Uber, they have Model Ys. And the chargers are just like like perennially loaded. People wait hours and hours and hours. So yeah, it's a real problem. It's a real problem.
Yeah. And also, if I'm a Norwegian car enthusiast, what am I buying?
I mean, Model 3s, Model 3 Performance. Um, you know,
But
uh,
is that the future performance car that you want? Like I don't hate I'm not here to diss in the Model 3. It's excellent product.
Yeah, look, I mean, I've barely spent any time in them, but I have friends that like race their Model 3s. They like
Right.
unplugged performance and mountain performance, whatever. They mod them, they love them, and they whoop everyone's ass.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I,
all right. So I'm coming at you from an Audi
yeah,
background, right? There are people who love and swear by performance avants. I love performance avants, but it's not the same thing as a sports car, right? Like it's just not. And that's where I'm going with the Model 3. It's excellent
yeah.
product for what it but is it an enthusiast car? Like for Model 3
Well,
enthusiasts, yes.
well, the way these are modded out, I know they're faster than sports cars, so
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like they're really. I mean, I look at their we have a track out here called Button Willow, and the Button Willow times for like these really modded Model 3 performance cars are like they're with GT3s. I mean, it's wild, and
Right.
Model 3 doesn't weigh that much. So yeah, I don't know. I didn't really honestly when I was in Norway, I was kind of just seeing an old friend. So I noticed they had a lot of ID buzzes, short wheelbase ID buzzes, were all the government vehicles, which seemed really cool. Um, yeah, I didn't really look too close, and they're buying a lot of stuff we don't get. I just wasn't paying super close attention, and so but somehow it works over there, and I figured out how it works is that everybody has a charger,
Right.
and here everybody who has an apartment. And I know lots of people that would like, oh, I'd get an EV, but I can't get a home charger. And it's like my landlord won't let me install it. I'll pay for the whole thing. They just won't let me. So
Yeah.
landlords are afraid of doing anything. And so we need, the political will to, Newsom's got to say, hey, I'm going to get rid of internal combustion cars in 2035 and everybody will have a charger.
Man, I'm not anti-EV. I own one. I love it. It's a
Yeah.
great car for what it does. But I guess the like forcing the mandating of it is it's kind of like the political disconnect we have today, right? Like everybody on both sides is convinced they're righteous, and and nobody wants to like look at the other side and go, well, that part makes sense. On that part, you're loopy, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I definitely see it that like, boy, we're really maybe in for climate collapse a lot sooner than we thought.
fair.
And as the CO2 levels are at a point where they haven't been in like millions of years, and like what happened the last time they got to this point? Mass die off. 97% of the life on Earth died.
Right.
Well, that's not good.
So
Especially if the sea levels rise 50 feet. That would be really bad for humanity. And
then how do
again,
you,
look, planet Earth survived just fine without the dinosaurs. It'll survive just fine without us. I'd like my child to have a
same.
future, and his future children to have futures. But so that's kind of where I see it, and like
Right,
what?
but I guess the nuance there is trying to get to how do you get to your model where all the RAV4s with shitty engines go away and go to EV, whereas you can keep the really unique mechanical artwork, if you will, right?
Look, the rich just use more resources than the rest of us, and it's just how it is, and it's going to be. And I, I'm not
Right, but
particularly.
with a mandate,
Yeah.
I guess what I'm looking for is a happy medium, right? Like, how do we get to the point where there's
Well, you gotta make EVs better than the gas alternative, right? So that's the easy way to do a mandate is like you're giving up your RAV4, but man, the RAV5 is gonna blow your mind. And yeah, I don't know. Again, Norway did it.
if the
They
so
seem fine over in Norway, like they're just fine.
so depending on some of these 718 rumors, it almost seems like the entry level and above but not top level of the 718 range would be EV, and then there would still be this RS or whatever at the top of the range that is ICE. That to me almost seems like a way to, we're not killing it. It's, it's still there. It's just now you got to be
Could
serious.
very well be. It's all speculation. I
Right.
just no.
I
I
guess what I'm
just
asking more is philosophically. We don't know what's going on with
yeah,
Porsche inside, but
yeah.
to me, that almost seems like a happy medium of, for the people who are really committed to having those cars, they can, while everybody else who uses an appliance goes for the appliance.
Yeah, but maybe. Yeah, I mean, it's just like I said. You just if you could, you know, EVs should be better and cheaper, and we're getting there with battery prices where they're soon could be cheaper. The price of lithium is, I think it's really close to like $100 a kilowatt hour, and if you make EVs efficient, you can live with a 65 kilowatt hour battery pack.
Right.
Uh, and so it's cheaper, should be cheaper on paper at least than internal combustion. So it should be cheaper to buy, definitely cheaper to run, as you know. EVs are way cheaper to run than a gas car, especially when you factor in maintenance and time at gas stations and all that nonsense.
Right.
Or money spent at gas stations, I should say. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, how it's going to pan out. I know, I believe, and again, just looking at like what China's doing, like it is inevitable that the overwhelming majority of automobiles become electric. I think the time frame went back 5 years, so instead of 2035, it's now 2040. But I
Right.
think it's just going to happen because they're better, and again, I'm talking about your Accord. Like, I'm not talking about your GT3. I'm not talking about your GT3. I'm talking
Yeah.
about your
Well,
RAV4.
but if you leave the decision making to the people who landed on the EV side of the fence inside the companies, there are people in these companies who don't see, they're people inside Audi who are of RS, right? Like who see these electric appliances being the way because they don't see the value of, right? And if the people who really understand the value of cars as a something to care about and to be enthusiastic about
Yeah.
only sit on the ICE side of the fence, we end up with no bridge, right? Like I think that's
I mean, yeah, maybe look, this happened at Ford, right? They split the company in two. Farley talks out of both sides of his mouth, right? He gets up there and introduces that little EV truck the other day, and this is the future of Ford. And again, it's what you're talking about, is splitting our society. Like, we consume that, and then I noticed all my hot rod friends. Farley talked about the Mustang and said, as long as the government and God allow us to build a V8 Mustang, we'll build a V8. And it's like, it's so pandering, but guess what? They ate it up. They ate it up. God is going to allow for a V8.
yeah,
They split the company in two. They literally did, and I remember we interviewed Doug Fields, who he came from Tesla. He built the Model 3, and he actually built the iPhone for Apple. But and he said, like, we one of the reasons we split in two is a culture clash, and this is what you're talking about with people inside Audi. He goes, I got some really smart people that want to come to work in a bathrobe, and that doesn't fly in Dearborn. So we have a new company in California. Ford Blue or whatever they're calling it.
in bathrobes.
Yeah, in bathrobes, but they're really smart. And he said, he's like, I would rather have one really smart guy than 100 average people.
Sure.
That's what he said. I didn't say. I don't know. Average people are
No,
fine. So
well, being multi-trick
yeah,
pony, if you will, ironically, probably not a bad thing, right? If in a world where the Mustang and the GTD can exist and keep that audience
sure.
happy, and then
Look, just to name drop, I was talking with Jay Leno yesterday about his new GTD, and I'm not name dropping, but he's the only guy I know that owns a GTD,
right,
and he was just telling me how incredible it is, and how like it costs more than his Rolls Royce or thereabouts. But he bought a Spectre, the electric Rolls Royce, which he loves, but he was saying how it's so much more than a Mustang and so much better than he thought it would be, and this, that, and the other. So yeah, it seems that Ford is going to do kind of what we're talking about and just split the company. And maybe Porsche might be going the way of like, hey, like the two doors keep the gas engines and the four doors don't.
yeah,
Like, I mean, and you've probably driven at least the RS e-tron, the 2.0 version of that. Like,
Right.
man, have I ever driven a better car? Like, I don't know. Like, that thing is phenomenal. And like,
It is.
I drove the RS6 just after driving the RS e-tron. It's like, just make a wagon out of the e-tron and call it a day. You'd have
They
the
totally should have made an e-tron GT wagon. Totally.
right? Like, it blew me away. I was not prepared for how much I was going to love that car. And I just drove the Panamera, whatever it's called, the Turbo S Hybrid E, blah 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 blah, E Hybrid, 700 billion whatever horsepower, and I drove the Weissach Turbo GT Taycan. And let me tell you which one I would rather have. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Well, all right. So when I swap out, I'll try and wrap this up because I know we're
Yeah,
done.
I just got a text that Cadillac's coming to take my lovely. They're swapping it for another electric Cadillac, but
Are you okay for the moment?
I'm okay with it. I got about 5 minutes.
Okay. So when I went to get rid of my Rivian and get into something that would handle the bumps better, I ended up at a buddy of mine's on a high-end used car dealer. I was going to move into an RS e-tron GT that he had, out exclusive, $180,000 sticker. It was at like 72. It was right.
What was it? What year? What year though?
It was a
first gen.
23. Yeah, it was a pre.
Nah, I can't. Not good enough.
Okay,
Like,
but bear in mind, the rest of us plebes who aren't Motor Trend, right? And
no, not good enough in terms of range. That's what I'm saying. In terms of you've run into the problem with what we're talking about with Chargers, whereas the new e-tron is just range, and charging. That's what
okay, fair. Where I'm going, not the range that got me, because I'm used to an e-tron, the regular old e-tron, right? So I can live with that.
Yeah.
But it was more. Well, one, it didn't have a Tesla adapter yet, but the other side of it was 180. Like it dropped over 50% since 2023, and this was last January. And I got in. And he also had an RS5 competition. Was half the price new. They were both at the same price, like a year and a half in. And so the depreciation was the RS5 clearly holds the number better. I called my insurance company, and it was $2,000. I have a 16-year-old at home. $2,000 more a year to insure the e-tron GT than it was the RS5 Comp. And honestly, the RS5
really? That's crazy.
And I bought the RS5 Comp. And I got to say, it was the better size. It was lighter. It was more fun to drive. It wasn't as fast.
Great car. But I just you said how much had the RS5 depreciated?
RS5 had started at like 95 grand, and it was at like 69 or 70.
Oh, sorry, I misheard you. Okay,
they were both 23s.
Look, I mean, this is people think it's this EV thing. Like, go look at a 2015 S63. What's that worth?
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah,
four doors friggin' depreciate.
Totally.
Go look at old Rolls Royces. There's nothing cheaper.
I was surprised when they did the Taycan and the e-tron GT that, like, if you wanted to depreciate, you just stuck it in the class that depreciates the hardest, like by making it a sedan.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not gonna. I like the RS5, especially the competition one. That's a great car. But like, again, if you just said to me, there's no money, just take you can take the RS5, or you can take the new the second gen, we're gonna call it RS e-tron GT. I'm taking that RS all day. I'm not even looking back. That is one of the best driving, I think, with the exception of the R8, the best driving Audi ever made. I think it's, and I haven't even driven the one with the helicopter suspension. I just drove the regular one, which they accidentally gave me, and Audi was like freaking out that I had that car and not the. And I'm like, I don't want the helicopter. I want this one. This is incredible because it was just such a great freaking car. I love that thing. Anyways, I can talk cars all day, obviously, but I do have to.
Thank you.
This guy's gonna be here in 2 minutes.
Yeah, no, thanks for your time, man. I really. appreciate it.
Absolutely, George. It was fun. Do it again.
Yeah, let's definitely do.
Cool.
All right, talk soon.
Okay, bye.
The Four Rings, If You Know, You Know podcast is part of the Weekly Driver podcast series. For more news and features about Audi, visit the Four Rings, If You Know, You Know website at oooiykyk.com. That's 4OSIYKYK.com. There, you can also subscribe to the Four Rings If You Know You Know Substack newsletter that will keep the latest Audi news and features coming straight to your inbox. Four Rings, If You Know You Know, is an independent production and not affiliated with the Audi brand. If you know, you know.